Hello, my name is Dr. Andy Fear. I work in the Department of Classics, Ancient History, Archaeology and Egyptology at the University of Manchester. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the most iconic of all images of the Emperor Augustus, the Prima Porta statue. Here's the top of it on the slide. It's a very well-known statue. It was discovered in the 19th century, but it still is quite a complex and somewhat mysterious object. So first of all, although we know it came from the Prima Porta villa on the outskirts of Rome, we don't know exactly where in that villa it was found, and so whether it was a very public or quite a private object. Nor do we know when it was created and erected. Some people, and I think I'd include myself, would say it comes from the earlier part of the reign of the Emperor Augustus, but other historians would place it in the later part of Augustus's reign, and some even in the reign of the following emperor, the Emperor Tiberius. Another interesting question is this the original statue? It's indubitably Roman, but many Roman marble statues were copies of bronze originals, and there could have been a bronze original of the Prima Porta statue. If there was, it could have been erected in a much more prominent place, and therefore had a much more increased propaganda value. Well, when we look at the statue, we can see that it was originally coloured. This is a good reminder that it would have been more striking and the details much more clear to ancient eyes than they are to ours. Also, when we look at it, we can see the body is slightly curved. We've got one leg straight, one leg bent. And this copies a very famous Greek statue called the Spear Bearer, the Doryphorus, of the sculptor Polykleitos. This is a statue which is all about military victory. Augustus did not have a good military reputation, but of course emperor, imperator means general, perhaps victorious general in some contexts, and therefore it was very important to get this right. And the Prima Porta statue is part of a concerted attempt to persuade the Romans that their ruler is indeed a great general. The Doryphorus style is interesting in itself. The intellectual Quintilian said that this style made for a Sanctus, a revered, et Gravis, serious attitude. What better way for an emperor to present himself to his people? As well as being Greek, though, this is a very, very Roman statue. Augustus wants to show that he's a cultured man, but he also wants to show his Roman credentials. Here we can see Pliny saying the Greeks prefer statues with heroic nudity, but the Romans much preferred statues of soldiers wearing breastplates. And goes on to say Julius Caesar had such a statue erected of himself in the Roman Forum. My picture, again, might be a copy of that statue. As you can see, once again, we've got that Doryphorus pose, straight leg, bent leg. And of course, for Augustus, erecting a statue similar to that of his father, as he would have it, his adoptive father, Julius Caesar, is trying to say, I am just like my father. My father was a great general. I too am a great general. The statue itself has a message from the top of its head to the tips of its toes, and we'll have a look at all of those now, and one after the other. So when we look at the head of the emperor on the Prima Porta statue, we can see it's semi-idealized. It's clearly an individual, but any form of physical imperfection has been smoothed away. Here's a parallel picture of Augustus. This is from a bronze statue. It was found in Meroe in Ethiopia, of all places. It was taken as war booty there by the Ethiopians, in fact. And you can see it's got a strong family resemblance to the Prima Porta statue. There is no headgear on the Prima Porta statue, despite Augustus wearing a general's uniform. It's very important for everyone straight away to see who this great general is, and a helmet's going to get in the way. Also, of course, no laurel wreaths, no crowns. Augustus is saying, I am just another Roman citizen, well respected, but nothing special. And the haircut, I think, amplifies that message. It's simple. There's nothing fancy or regal about this. It's just the haircut of an ordinary citizen. And of course, the statue exudes calmness. This is a general who is always in command. You can trust him to see you through. Perhaps there's a bit of a parallel with Augustus's favourite god. If we look at the temple of Olympian Zeus at Olympia, Apollo strides through the chaos caused by the battle of the Lapiths and Centaurs, exuding calmness and power. And I just wonder whether there's a parallel to be had there. And I put a little picture of Apollo down at the bottom there to see if you think that that's a good idea. If we move down from the head to the hands, these are perhaps the most awkward part of the statue. The right hand is a restoration by and large. Only the index finger is genuine. Usually the hand is shown giving a gesture called the ad locutio gesture, something an orator would make before he's going to make a particularly important point. But it could be quite different, and it could have held something. Maybe when we think about the breastplate, the statue holding a standard would in fact be quite a nice idea. Equally, we don't know what was in the left hand. It's often shown holding a long field marshal's baton. That's perfectly possible, but it could have been something else. An alternative perhaps would be a laurel branch marking victory. That would tie in quite nicely with a story told about the Prima Porta villa, which is when the Emperor Augustus and Livia went there for their wedding breakfast. An eagle dropped a white chicken carrying a laurel branch into Livia's lap, a symbol of fertility and victory, military success. Here's a mosaic of a charioteer called Marcianus from a town Augustus founded, Augusta Emerita or Merida in Spain, and you can see that his gesture is very similar in some ways to the Prima Porta statue. The right hand is held up. Obviously the emperor wouldn't hold a whip, but something else could go there. And tight to the left there at the waist is the left hand holding a laurel branch of victory. This is a triumphant charioteer. Let's now look at the breastplate, the main propaganda part of the statue. If this soldier is a great soldier, which the statue wants to present us as, we can see his great triumphs depicted on the breastplate. It's a rather complicated image, and so I put a line drawing here so we can see each bit of it. At the very top we have the hinges which join the breast and the backplate together. Each of them has got a sphinx on. That's quite useful for us when we think about the statue's date. We know that in the early part of his reign, the Emperor Augustus used the sphinx as an emblem on his signet ring. Later in the reign he changed it to the head of Alexander the Great, so maybe that's a way of thinking about when this statue was created. Underneath we've got a bearded figure holding up something behind him, a charioteer, two winged figures in front of the chariot. Then going down we've got the central part of the breastplate, the thing that would catch the eye most strongly, the surrender of a standard by an Eastern barbarian. We can see from his dress he's wearing trousers. He's an Easterner, to a Roman general. On either side of that central part scene, there are two ladies seated looking rather sorry for themselves. Beneath them, we've got two individuals riding on animals, and at the very, very bottom, a recumbent figure. So let's have a look at the central scene, by far the most striking part of the statue. And here we can see the surrender of a standard to a Roman general. You can see him wearing his field marshal's cloak. This time he's got a helmet on. The standard is clever. It's a double standard. It's clearly got an eagle or legion, but the round objects on the shaft of the standard come from other styles of Roman standards, so we get two for the price of one at this point. Who is this individual? Well, he's going to be a Parthian. This must be a reference to the return of the Roman standards lost in various campaigns to the Roman people in 20 BC. And of course, that isn't just here, it's found in the res gestae as well, and as we'll see in other places. So the res gestae there, I compelled the Parthians to return the spoils and standards, etc. Well, compelled is an interesting word. It implies, doesn't it, a military campaign. The statue of a general showing this in its centre implies a military campaign. But of course, this was a diplomatic victory, not a military one. Standards were returned, but no battle was fought. Of course, if you were to think such a battle had been fought, I dare say the Emperor Augustus wouldn't have been that upset about your mistake. Who Who is the Roman? Well, a lot of suggestions have been made. Could it be the Emperor Augustus one more time? Well, it could be, couldn't it? Our sort of picture within a picture, if you like. And this time we can have a helmet, we can have boots, which we see as well, and it would work. But he wasn't the man who actually received the standards. That, in fact, was his stepson Tiberius, acting as a general out in the east. So could this be Tiberius? But I wonder about that. If it was a statue from the later part of Augustus's reign, maybe that would work, because Tiberius was being groomed to be emperor. But earlier on, he wasn't, and maybe that's a little bit too strong. Some people have suggested that this is an allegory of the goddess Roma. Again, I'm not so sure about that. Roma sometimes wears a helmet, but she never wears a military uniform, so I think we'd probably rule that one out. Or, of course, it could just be a generic general representing the Roman army resurgent. If anything, perhaps we should go maybe for a mixture of 1 and 4. An allegorical general, but perhaps if you mistook him for Augustus, Augustus again wouldn't be awfully upset about all of that. Why has the general got a dog? Again, could that dog be the she-wolf of Rome? The general's legs, and again, look, there's that Doryphorus pose, are in the way of his telling, but it would be quite a nice solution to see the animal not as a dog, but in fact as a wolf, symbolising Rome. The return of the standards was a very big deal for the Emperor Augustus, and here are some coins minted across the empire to show that, and how the Prima Porta statue plugs into a much wider propaganda campaign. On the left-hand side, we've got the standards return, the coin from Rome. At the top, we've got a coin from Cordoba in Spain, the very west of the empire. There are the standards. The standards returned is what it says in Latin, cleverly mixed up with another propaganda emblem, the shield of virtue, something else that Augustus is very proud of. Down below, Pergamum, Turkey, the east of the empire, we can see in Latin, Signis Preceptis, the standards got back, and this time the stress on the big triumphal arch Augustus built in Rome to celebrate that fact. And of course, when Augustus built his own forum and the Temple of Mars the Avenger in that forum, that's where these standards went, and it was their final resting place. And here's that again celebrated on coins. Well, that's the central victory, but this faceplate is all about victory, and there are more to be seen here. If we look at the two figures to the left and right of the central scene, on the left-hand side we see this rather miserable lady sitting down, holding out a sword in an act of surrender, hilt first. It's a sword with a curved hilt. It's a Spanish sword, a falcata. I've put a couple of replicas there for you to have a look at. And this is to celebrate the Cantabrian Wars in the north of Spain, wars where the emperor took the field himself for a period of time. When he thought they had finished in 25 BC, the temple of Janus was closed, something very symbolic. It symbolises the bringing of peace across the entire world. So there's another victory, a great triumph against the Parthians, a triumph against the Spaniards. And if we look to the right, we see the same thing. Here we can see another lady. This time she's got a pet, a boar, in front of her, holding a very curious object. I think it's the top of a carnix, a Celtic war trumpet, and this is to mark a victory against Celts. So which Celts? Well, we've got various options. Maybe it celebrates Augustus, Octavian as he was at the times, triumphs in what is now Croatia, ancient Dalmatia, at the very beginning of his political career. Or maybe it marks the annexation of the Alps between Italy and France, the so-called Maritime Alps, which happened in 7 or 6 BC. And again, Augustus made a big thing out of that. You can see here the remains of a massive monument at a place called La Turbie, just outside of Monaco. But I think I would go for a triumph over a tribe called the Morini, tribe who live in what we would think of now as the northern part of France. That's mentioned by Cassius Dio, But more importantly, it's also mentioned in Virgil's Aeneid in Book 8, where we encapsulate the history of Rome. And interestingly, the Morini are also talked about as the most far-flung men. So Augustus takes with his triumphs Roman power to the very edges of the world, just of course as his dad Julius Caesar had done so. I think I would go for the Morini. So now we've got 3 triumphs: Parthia, Spain, and the Morini of Gaul. But there are more to come, because if we look down at the 2 riding figures, we can see their 2 gods. The god Apollo, there he is with his lyre riding on a griffin, and there we've got Diana riding on a stag. That makes sense, of course, because she's the goddess of hunting. And it's interesting that the great propaganda poem, the Carmen Saeculare, the poem of our age, commissioned by Horace in 17 BC, begins with the words Apollo and Diana, mistress of the woods. So why are they there? Well, in 36 BC, the Emperor Augustus fought a naval battle off the coast of Sicily at a place called Naulochus. On the coast there's a shrine to Diana, and Augustus vowed that he would build a temple to Apollo and Diana if he was to win. He did win. He did build that temple. It's the temple of Apollo Palatinus, built in 28 BC, and also, interestingly, playing a major part in the secular games of 17 BC. So once again, I think we can see a convergence of propaganda and another reminder of Augustus's victories. Not just one, the Parthians, but now we've got 3 extra victories to show what a great imperator this man was. If we go back to the top of the breastplate, let's think about the bearded man holding something behind him. Well, he could be the rather obscure god Kylus, heaven. Or, of course, he could be Jupiter. It would make sense in some ways. But again, I think we can see a convergence of propaganda. Quite often, Saturn is shown in this sort of pose. And Saturn, for the Romans, was regarded as someone who would bring back a golden age for their country. And if we look at Virgil, the 4th eclogue, we have exactly that sentiment there. The kingdom of Saturn returns, says Virgil. So once again, I think we can see the breastplate, the statue, fitting into a broader line of propaganda. On the left-hand side, we've got a charioteer, the long flowing robe, typical of Greek charioteers. This is probably the sun god, Sol. On the other side, the lady with the torch is probably night. I'm going to bed now. The sun is bringing in this new day, this new world order, dare I say it, of Augustus. In front, we've got probably dawn, and her job is to scatter the morning dew over the land to go with the sun. And at the very bottom of the statue, of the breastplate, if we have heaven at the top, we've got earth at the bottom. Here is the goddess Tellus. And again, you can see she's holding a horn of plenty, a cornucopia, and there are children playing in her bosom. This is the fruit of peace and victory. The message is a simple one. Our leader is a great imperator. He has won great victories. They have brought peace, and peace in turn has brought prosperity across the earth. And that too is a message which is very, very strongly pushed. Here we can see part of the Areopagus, and there again is the goddess Tellus showing us fruit and fecundity. Underneath we can see the goddess Pax, peace, holding an olive branch in one hand and that cornucopia, the horn of plenty, in the other. Next to it, another gold coin, this one a little bit strange perhaps. The odd creature is Capricorn, the astrological sign of the Emperor Augustus. Behind the neck of the Capricorn is our friend the horn of plenty. Between its hooves is a picture, a representation of the world. So again, the emperor has brought peace and plenty to the world. And that image is a striking one, and it goes around the empire. Here we can see at Pergamum, a man called Herodes dedicating a little altar to Augustus, and there's that image, the Capricorn and the cornucopia. if we go down, another coin struck at Sinope on the Black Sea, modern-day northern Turkey. We can see once again the world, and there's the cornucopia next to it. Our great general has brought peace, and peace has brought plenty. Even the side of this statue works hard for us. It was probably bolted to the wall, but there are bits you can see, and here we can see on the side of the statue a tropaeum, a trophy, a coat of arms put on a tree stump, something the Romans always did when they won a battle on the field of battle. And I think the thing sticking out of the side is once again a carnix, a Celtic war chariot, to remind people of the emperor's victories over the Celts. And even the very bottom of the statue has a message for us. So here we can see the bit which helps the statue stand up, the dolphin and the little Cupid riding on it. Well, of course, they are quite appropriate. They draw attention to the divine ancestry of Augustus. Cupid is Venus's son. Venus sprang from the foam, hence the dolphin. And therefore we can see that line going back. This is another reason why we should respect the emperor. Interestingly, the emperor has no shoes. Careless to forget those when dressing for battle, and interesting because in the ancient world only statues of gods and demigods are barefooted. Everyone else has shoes. And once again here we can see perhaps a very quiet hint that the emperor is something rather special from the fact that he has no footgear. When we look at the Cupid, arguably, some people certainly said, this is a portrait. And it's the portrait of the young grandson of Augustus, Gaius Caesar. Again, someone being groomed to the emperor after the death of Augustus's nephew, Marcellus, in 23 BC. Gaius was born in 20. Statue perhaps shows him as a child of 3 or 4. And that would fit nicely if the statue was to be part, as I think it was, of the secular games celebrations of 17 BC. Other aspects of Gaius, but is he on the Areopagus? Again, I've shown you a little picture there of a child looking up. We don't know if that's Gaius, but maybe it is. And there's a genuine portrait of the man, so you can perhaps work out whether you feel that this is right or wrong. So, as we can see, the statue has an awful lot to tell us. It's an intense propaganda message, lots of different aspects, but above all, I am the great commander who has won victories, has brought peace and plenty. As ever, it's a little enigmatic. Here's Augustus using the Sphinx again on one of his coins, but it's a fascinating aspect of the past, and I hope you enjoy the puzzle as much as I have done over the years.